Back here now on the show to jump into one interesting statement I saw over the course of these last few days regarding the Cowboys, but nothing too negative on any extensions or anything like that. It still has to do with some money and how much the cornerbacks are earning in this day and age in the NFL, because it seems like each time the salary cap around the entire NFL is visited, it always seems like it gets bumped up, and seemingly every year more and more players get bigger extensions, right? The more the salary cap goes up, the more money goes to a lot of these positions, and most notably, it goes to the quarterbacks, the wide receivers, the offensive linemen, the defensive tackles, all those positions that usually are the highest earning. This offseason, we saw most of them go to the quarterbacks, obviously, the wide receivers, and a few offensive linemen thrown in there as well. And those are the positions that are earning the $35 million per year, the $55 million per year, the $28 to $30 million per year. Those are all comprised of the quarterbacks, wide receivers, edge rushers, interior defensive line, and offensive tackles specifically, which means that the other groups like the linebackers, the safeties, the running backs especially, right, are all in a group where they're all not earning any more than around $22 million per year. No player in any of those positions is earning any more than that. So there is a little bit of a discrepancy there, and included in that group is the defensive back position. And while Micah Parsons is obviously the host of his own podcast, he spoke recently about the wide receiver market obviously exploding this offseason. And while he was congratulating and talking about CeeDee Lamb and, getting his money, rightfully so, he brought up the idea of defensive backs also, being included in this discussion of trying to get a little bit of a pay raise here, right? Because in Micah Parsons' idea, one directly affects the other, and there's a big difference in how much each of them are getting paid, especially the best at their position. And he had a lot to say about it, honestly. I will provide you guys what he said here in just a second. If you look at your screen, he started off by saying, I think it's time for a bump to the cornerback market. I mean, all these receivers are making $30 million plus a year, and there's guys on islands because we in man, we in cover 3, we got to be covering these dudes. And I think it's time for the cornerback market to make a jump, because these wide receivers is making 30 plus million. I think about offensive tackles, right? That is actually on the next one. It continues. Apologies for that. He said, I think about offensive tackles, right? Offensive tackles are damn near at $28-30 million, and the best pass rushers is, between $25 to $30 million per year on that salary. And it's about $10 to $15 million difference between the top paid defensive back, which is still Jair Alexander, compared to the top earning wide receiver in their market being Justin Jefferson. There's a $14 million difference between the highest earners, and just in general, there's about $10 to $15 million as well difference between some of the other cornerbacks that are getting huge, contracts, huge based on their own markets. AJ Terrell just got his new extension. He's getting paid about $20 million per year. Not really anywhere close to what a guy like Brandon Ayuk is now getting paid, right? Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jalen Waddle, even guys at $25 million per year earning that much more, being the 10th or 11th highest paid wide receiver in their own market. They're still making $5 to $6 million more than the second or third highest paid corner in the NFL. So there is a bit of a drop off there. So I thought I'd bring this question up. Should the cornerbacks be making more money? And also, who would have to earn less money in the NFL if the corners were to make some more money? Because everything is relatable, right? Everything is connected in a salary cap driven, league. Everything based on the salary cap, and everything is sort of splitting it up amongst your team. The quarterbacks are taking a massive chunk of that pie, that salary cap pie that each team has. So the quarterbacks are taking a lot of it. Defensive tackles are also up there. Most notably, Chris Jones is making $31 million per year, a lot more, or not a lot more, but just more than a lot of wide receivers already in the NFL. Then you look at guys like Nick Bosa earning $34 million per year as well. And some offensive tackles are even making close to $30 million per year. So you look at cornerbacks now, and my thought process around all of this sides a little bit more towards Micah Parsons, just because I've always felt that the quarterback position, it's hard, obviously, right? In layman's terms, it's hard, it's difficult, it's very challenging to decipher yourself as one of the best elite quarterbacks in the division, or just in the NFL, actually, I should say. It's a hard position, right? It's the most important position, you could say. But in my opinion, I think defensive back is the hardest, toughest, most difficult position in the NFL for a couple of reasons over the quarterback spot, just because you look at the responsibilities, the physical toll on what corners have to do, and while the quarterback obviously has to run the whole show, right? I feel like corner is not in that same boat, and it's actually harder because it is so dependent on what offenses do, right? They dictate everything. The corner can only do as much as the offense, the quarterback on the opposing team decides to attack him, right? So with that being the case, you could have the perfect coverage on any wide receiver, but if that ball is in the perfect spot, if the quarterback makes sure he throws it to a spot where only his guy could get it, or it goes out of bounds, corners aren't really able to make a play on it, or it's so perfect that even though they put out their best performance, their best coverage, they still can't do anything about it. And similarly to that, corners, when they do that, you know how hard it is to cover somebody? I've never had to do it, but thinking about mirroring a wide receiver and how good all these wide receivers are in the NFL nowadays, can you only imagine trying to mirror someone for 5 seconds, going step for step? And not even that, but sometimes when these offensive lines are super good and the pass rush just isn't getting there, you're covering these guys for like 7-8 seconds, and it's near impossible if you're playing man, like Micah Parsons mentioned. A lot of the times, it's almost impossible to stay hip for hip, step for step with some of these wide receivers. You're going to have such a short memory, because oftentimes some of the best in the NFL lose a lot of their battles. So you're just going to have to shake that off, even if you give up a big gain or anything like that. Or again, if you have perfect coverage and the ball is just in a perfect spot and you can't do anything about it, you're going to just have to shake that off. And almost like you feel helpless out there, almost like defenders in basketball, right? You always hear the term, that was great defense, that was perfect defense, but it was just a better shot. It's similar to a cornerback in the NFL. And with that all being the case, just even adding on to the fact also that some of the best corners, if they're truly, truly great at man, great at all, their assignments, zone, and just staying disciplined on everything, it's so dependent that the quarterback can just simply look the other way to the other side of the field and say, I'm just not going to throw it to that guy. And then that's great if you're taking away a wide receiver, but at the same time, you can't, fall back on your heels at that point, because if it does come your way and you think it's not going to come your way, then you end up looking even worse, right? You give up a completion and then you might not see another throw for the next quarter and a half or something like that. So it's such a mental, physical battle all rolled into one that I think Micah Parsons does make a point that they should be earning more, but again, I posed that question before. Someone is going to have to make less. And you look at the markets for a lot of these positions, quarterbacks making near $60 million, almost $40 million more than the corners do, the highest earning corners. Yes, the quarterback is super important. No one's considered a contender until they have one of those quarterbacks making that amount of money. But is it $40 million more important than corners? I don't think it should be that big of a difference. That's just me. But it's going to continue to go up just because of how the NFL is played and how much importance and highlighting goes into quarterbacks. So I don't think there'll ever be a situation where they take away from the quarterback position, obviously. Then you look at others like I think defensive tackles could be earning a little less just based on Chris Jones making the most at $31 million. That's a good amount, and he deserves to get paid, but it feels like a lot in that spot, so it is hard. It's all subjective, really, on who you think deserves to be making the most money, but I think corners do deserve to be a little bit closer to some of the pass rushers, some of the offensive linemen in today's NFL, because you look at the next group to probably get played, it'll probably be Sauce Gardner or Pat Surtain to be the highest earning corner, just based on the trajectory that they're going on. They're probably going to get paid and only be earning about $23 million, if that. So with those guys and how important they are to their teams, this Jets defense wouldn't be what it is really without Sauce. And similarly to the Broncos, if they didn't have Pat Surtain, that level of corner, they, again, wouldn't be as formidable, I believe, because it is, again, near impossible to take away and shadow some of these best wide receivers in today's NFL, and those two guys do it better than a lot of people, a lot of corners in the NFL. So all of that is to say that I do agree with Micah, but in reality, it's hard to pick a position that you'd like to take away from. If I were to pick one, it would be quarterback, just because it shouldn't be that big of a difference, especially just because the next guy in line is going to make that money, just showing that maybe they don't deserve that amount of money based on who's getting paid, but that's a whole different conversation, right? But it is all subjective. It lacks, you can see, it just lacks the action at this point and how subjective it is, but it was an interesting point that I thought Micah made. And speaking about other positions getting paid, he is due up for an extension in a couple years now. So he's talking about corners getting paid, right? But if they do get a bump in their pay, someone's going to have to take less. And Micah's not going to be all too happy if pass rushers are suddenly bumped down just to pay corners. But it was an interesting point that I thought I'd highlight on today's show. But with that out of the way now, we can move on to two new topics that we will talk about on today's show. Montez Sweat had some strong words to say about his former team, the Washington Commanders. And what did he say? And just coming off of that, what are the expectations for both the Chicago Bears team and this Commanders team that are very similar to one another here in 2024? We're going to discuss that. Then also, continuing on our series on predicting the standings for each division in the NFL, we're going to talk about the NFC West in this division to close everything out. That is coming up in just a few moments. Don't go anywhere.